In business statistics, in the next two lessons, we will be seeing about the types of graphs and how to choose an appropriate graph for the given data. In the last lesson, we have seen the construction of the tables along with some series and frequency distribution, how the frequency is developed or how the frequency is constructed, and what is the actual frequency distribution we have already seen. We have seen discrete series and continuous series. Of course, in our individual observations, we do not have any frequency distribution. The tally marks or the tally bars, which indicates the frequency, how many times the value has occurred is in the given data, is also seen. And in the objectives, that is after completion of this lesson and the next lesson, of course, we will understand what are the different types of diagrams to represent the given data, and we will also understand how to choose an appropriate graph for a given data. A diagram or a graph, a picture is worth 1,000 words. There is a saying like this, because if you see the picture is more attractive. The attention is diverted to towards the picture. The message imbibed in the picture, or the message which is going to be conveyed by the picture, can also be easily understandable by an illiterate also. An illiterate, of course, cannot understand if the sentence is given and the message is given in the sentence. So the picture speaks more than the 1,000 words, and graphs and diagrams are a very effective presentation for statistical data also. And graphs help and better easily and understand better understanding of the complex data also. It also helps to compare related data and bring out subtle difference with amazing clarity. When it comes to the importance of graphs, we'll see what is the importance of graphs. When we see the importance of graphs, present huge data in simple pictures. We can present the huge data also, very large data also, in very simple pictures, which can be easily understandable by the user of the graphs. And it also gives, graphs also gives very greater clarity to data. That's why the saying which we have seen in the last slide, thousand a picture speaks more than 1,000 words. With this only we can understand the meaning of that sentence. They facilitate quick understanding. The picture or the graph will depict each and every uh, simple things which are given in the graphs, so that it can be easily understandable, and it takes less time to understand than the other method which is given in sentences. Highlights trends in data. We can easily identify whether a trend is increasing or decreasing with the use of these graphs also. And the graphs also create a positive and lasting impression. As I said in the previous slide, a picture will give you a clearly which is set in mind, and we cannot easily forget the picture what we have seen earlier. So the importance is continued here also. It facilitates comparison of data. The comparison of data is very easy, because in the last slide we have seen the trends also can be understood very easily. The graphs will give you a clear information about the increasing and decreasing of the things which are shown in the variables which are shown in the graphs, and that will facilitate the comparison of the data. You can compare the previous data with the present data. Previous year sales can be compared with this year's sales, because we can draw both the sales of previous year and current year in the same graph, or we will be able to keep the graphs side by side, and we can compare the pictures very easily. Have universal acceptance. The pictures or the graphs, whatever you use, are having universal acceptance, and they are accepted by anybody anywhere in the world. And it also highlights the hidden facts and relationships. It will also highlight whatever the facts which are hidden in the data and the relationships between the data, because the data which is related to one another, the variables are which are related to one another, can be used in statistics very comfortably. And it also create interest in the subject. We will It will create interest to understand, to study more about the picture when we see an attractive picture. And it also saves time, energy, and costs. As I said in the previous slide, we will be able to understand very easily, such that time can also be saved, energy can also be saved, because it will take less time, and it will it take only a little time for understanding also. So that will automatically consumes less energy, and it also uh, it also costs very less. Limitations of diagrams. When we see the importance of diagrams, there are some limitations in the diagrams. Of course, we can remove the limitations of the diagrams, or sometimes we may not be able to use the diagrams, and another suitable method can be adopted for uh, depicting the data, or presenting the data for understanding of the user. First is, information cannot be meaningfully presented when the information which is not presently meaningfully presented, when the data is having too much details. When too much details are there, for example, in graphs, normally we can draw 2 dimension, or at the most 3 dimension. If more dimensions are there for the data, we may not be able to depict the in depth of the picture, and we may not be able to understand the facts and the relationships and facts and figures of the data or the graph. And it has a limited capability to highlight small differences. A small difference in the data may not be easily understandable, may not be easily identifiable, because if the data is large and we have small difference in the data, then it is very difficult for us to show them in the graph paper, and that too with the difference. So in large measurements, we cannot easily highlight the differences, small differences which is existing in the data. And it can present vision illusions also. Sometimes we may be misled by the picture. If it is attractive, we will see that, but we will not be able to understand what is that. We will be remembering the picture, but it cannot be it cannot we cannot understand the picture if the data is very complex, and if the data is not presented also, and it can be misleading uh, finally. And most diagrams are complex. Diagrams are very complex. Whatever is said, a diagram will depict more than 1,000 words and so on. But ultimately, an illiterate cannot draw the diagram as professionally as a person who knows about the diagrams, because to draw the graphs, to draw the diagrams to convey the message, whatever the data presenter is thinking of, and whatever he is having in his mind. If he is not able to present it properly, then it will become more complex and it is very difficult to understand. Single diagram does not convey much comparison always. If the data is very simple, then a single diagram may convey so much meaning and so much message to the presenter and the reader also. But always this is not possible. Sometimes 3 or 4 pictures may be required, or more complex pictures may be required, so, which we may not be able to understand easily and accurately. And it does not also disclose it does not exactly reflect the values. We can understand the approximate value of the data, but there is one limitation, that is, if there is small difference in the data, we cannot easily convey the message, or we cannot easily understand exactly that some meaning is there in that. So it only conveys approximate values, and it will not convey the message properly unless you are very proficient. We are very well versed with the drawing of the graphs, and the graph paper is good enough to hold the whole data. Then we may understand to some extent, but it is not possible to understand the exact message the figures or the values are conveying. And it cannot be a substitute for tabular presentation. Tabular presentation or table presentation, we may be giving the table for 2 pages or 3 pages also. So with some difficulty, we can compare the figures in the table by keeping all the pages one by one after another side by side, and then we can try to understand the data which is presented in the table, and it is very easy to compare also. But that clarity will not be there in the pictures if pictures are shown as 4 or 5 pictures, or a complex data is presented in the pictures. Some rules are there for constructing the diagrams. When we are constructing the diagrams, we have to keep some rules in the mind, and then we have to draw the pictures. These rules will help the user to understand the picture in the correct way in which the presenter is presenting the data. After all, the communication is complete only when the receiver and the informer or the sender understands the meaning of the message in an exact manner in which the sender is sending, and by which this user or the receiver is receiving. They should understand the same meaning of the message, otherwise it cannot serve the purpose. In the same way, if the presenter is presenting the data in one way, in one mood, with having some concept in his mind, and if the reader or the user of the diagram is not able to understand it properly, or if he is misunderstanding the picture or the message which is given in the picture, then obviously that cannot serve the purpose. Now we will see what are the rules for constructing the diagrams. So before this, I want to explain you some graph paper very briefly. If we are using graph papers for drawing the diagrams, for presenting the data, then we have to observe certain things. Graph paper will be available in the market, and they are consisting of small boxes. All boxes are there in the graph paper. The graph paper consists of small boxes, square boxes measuring 1 mm in length and 1 mm in breadth. And these boxes will will be there in a big box which is drawn with which is identified with a thick line inside the graph paper, and 10 mm boxes will make one thick box. That box obviously will will have 1 centimeter of length and 1 centimeter of breadth. So the many papers, many size papers, different sizes of graph papers are available in the market, and we can select any graph paper which we require. So depending on the requirement, we can select the graph paper. And when we are using the graph paper, we have to follow these rules which we are seeing now. And of course, some other rules are there for drawing the graph paper, but we will discuss whenever it comes to our uh, discussion. Title. Every time when you draw a diagram, we should give a title to the diagram. Even when we are drawing the table also, when we are constructing a table also, we have to give a title for the table also. Otherwise, the user cannot understand the concept at one go. If an appropriate title is given, then the user can understand for which purpose this diagram is used, for which purpose this graph is used, so that the user can easily judge, can easily understand whether the data is presented properly or not. So this title is very, very important in the diagram. Scale. Scale means the height and width of the, or length and breadth of the diagram, the data, complex data, how it is presented on a small paper. Because for data, you may be having some 4 or 5 pages of data, but when it comes to a diagram, you are giving it in maximum 1 page. That means we are condensing the information to small picture so that the picture can easily convey the meaning. So the complete data must be covered in the picture. So the scale, the size of the data and the size of the picture should match each other, and the message should be conveyed properly. For example, when we are talking about the distance, for example, the distance is 100 meters. So we cannot show the distance of 100 meters in a diagram, obviously, or a length and breadth of 1 meter and 1 meter also, we cannot show it in the picture. Then what we have to do is we have to equate the distance, actual distance, with the presumed distance according to the graph paper, according to the size of the graph paper. According to the size of the graph paper, that is how many boxes are there in the lengthwise and the breadthwise also. Then we have to select the number of boxes appropriately. For example, 1 meter, 1 meter in length and width, or 1 meter, 2 meters length and width, we can select some 10 centimeters for 1 meter. Then the data can be presented appropriately by using 10 centimeters when we are trying to show the 1 meter length correctly. So proportionate between width and height should also be there. When we are saying 1 meter is equal to 10 centimeters, then obviously 2 meters will become 20 centimeters. If it is the data is more than 20 centimeters or 20 meters, then we cannot show the data properly. So choice of diagram is also very important, because there are different types of diagrams, there are different types of graphs, one dimensional, two dimensional, graph, bar graph diagrams, pie diagrams, and so many other curves are also there, which we have to use appropriately for the given data. Index means what I said now, for which scale you are using which, or which diagram, which part of the diagram is indicating which part of the data, that we have to show it very clearly. Which part of the diagram is showing which part of the data. All the data should be covered in the diagram. Then which part of the data is shown in the picture at certain point, at certain place, that we have to clearly show. That is called index. Footnotes: if something is to be conveyed to the user, for understanding the big picture betterly, we have to use some notes below the graph paper or to the side of the graph paper. Normally, a graph paper will be having one side graph and one side ruled or unruled paper. A blank paper will be there, so that we can write all the notes, all the rules on the back side of the graph paper or side by side of the graph paper. Your title, scale, proportion between width and height, choice of diagram, index, footnotes, everything we can write on this blank space of the graph paper. And then some things we have to indicate on the graph paper also, or the diagram also. For example, title is to be written on the top of the picture, and scale is to be written on the top right hand corner of the graph paper. Likewise, proportion between width and height should be maintained, and the index and footnotes are also written normally on the right side top hand corner of the graph paper. So likewise, we have to write some more points on the graph paper also. Some more rules are there. Source note: from where this data is taken, from where this data is taken and shown in the picture, that source also we have to mention very clearly below the graph paper or below the diagram very clearly. Simplicity: as far as possible, the data available should be presented in a very simple form, which is very easily understandable at a glance, or by going through the picture at no time. So that is very important, and neatness is also very important. We are not expected to strike out the things which are in the picture. We have to clearly erase the unwanted things, and then we should clearly depict, or we should clearly present the picture in a proper way, which is suitable for the given data. And communicative: it should be, the picture should be easily communicative to the user. When we go through the data, we can understand to some extent for what purpose the data is given, for what purpose the data is presented, uh, for um, understanding. And then it should be same when you go through the picture also. So the whatever the data message is message data is conveying, that same meaning should be conveyed by the uh, picture also. And the picture should be self-explanatory as far as possible. The presenter may be available or may not be available, uh, whenever the user has some doubts. So in the absence of presenter, the reader or the user of the graphs or pictures must be able to understand the picture very clearly. Because when you have seen some rules in the previous slide, all those things will help you to present the picture in very understandable form, and they are self-explanatory in themselves, and the picture is more reliable, because a picture is always conveying the meaning correctly when it is given correctly. If the picture is drawn perfectly, then it will convey the meaning perfectly. So it is more reliable than any other mode of presentation. Now we will see diagrams classification. Diagrams are uh, classified in four types of diagrams. They are one-dimensional diagrams. These one-dimensional diagrams we can easily identify, or even two-dimensional. When we have only single variable in the data, for example, yesterday we have seen individual observations. In individual observations, there are some 5 students and marks are there. The 5 students has scored. Then we can show the names of the students on the x-axis and the marks obtained on the y-axis, so that the marks and students can be marked there. When we are marking the graph paper, then we can easily identify the point where the marking should be done. After marking, then the presenter must draw a line from the point where y-axis is coinciding to the point on the x-axis. Below that, a line should be drawn there. So single line will be there, a simple line, so that it can easily understand. A bar diagram also conveys the same. A bar diagram also can be given. Bar means it is having two lines, and then it will be showing the data very clearly. What I have explained you previously is line diagram, and this is bar diagram. And another classification is two-dimensional diagrams. Two-dimensional diagrams are normally length and breadth, length and height, circles. All these are called two-dimensional pictures because we have two types of variables there. Length and breadth are two variables. In all the pictures where we have two variables, we can draw these two-dimensional diagrams also. So two-dimensional diagrams are single dimensional diagrams are having one variable, and two-dimensional diagrams normally have two variables. So if you select a three-dimensional data, three-dimensional diagram is to be produced. This is somewhat difficult to visualize, but up to three-dimensional figures we can easily visualize, we can easily draw the pictures, we can easily present the picture also. Beyond these three-dimensional pictures, three-dimensional diagrams, when we have three variables, then we can show to some extent the picture on the graph can be presented easily. If more number of variables are there, more than three variables, then it will become complex and it will become difficult to present them in a graph paper or in a pictorial form or in a picture form. So three-dimensional diagrams examples are cubes, cylinders, spheres, etc. In cubes, if we see three variables, one is height, length, and depth. That also you can depict there. In cylinder also the same thing, and in spheres also the same thing. Next category is pictograms and cartograms. Pictograms and cartograms are also related to the pictures only. They are more picture oriented than any scale or something else. They are normally drawn by some professionals. Now we will see in detail what are the dimensions, what are the different types of dimensional figures. We have seen one dimension, two dimension, three dimension, pictograms, all these things. Now we will see in detail what are those. One dimensional diagrams are, as I said, line diagrams. Only line is drawn to represent one variable. A single line is drawn. A single variable will be there. Single line is drawn. Lines may be vertical or horizontal. In the previous slide, when I am explaining the single dimension, I was telling you the names of the students are shown on the x-axis. Sometimes we can show the names of the students on the y-axis also. Then the marks scored, the data which is related to the marks are to be shown on the x-axis. Then we have to draw a horizontal line instead of vertical line. A straight line above, we can draw a horizontal line across the graph paper also. The length of the line is in proportion to the values of terms. We have seen some rules. Height and width should be in coordination or which is depicting the actual scale. That we can show here appropriately. The size should be shown properly. The size should be shown appropriately. Because when a student has scored 50 marks in one subject, then it is shown at certain level. And if a student has scored 100 marks, then obviously the comparing lines should be double so that the user can understand very easily. So these are some of the things which we have to remember when we are drawing the one-dimensional diagrams. Next, we will see some examples regarding this. In prepare line diagram for the following data. Player number one, height. In the example, I have told you about the single dimension. I have taken student name and marks obtained. Here we are taking player number and height in centimeters. This is an individual observation problem where we do not have any frequency. Okay, here first player has height of 192 centimeters, second player is having 165 centimeters, third player is having 171 centimeters, and so on. We will see how this can be presented in the graph paper or on a paper in the form of a picture like this. On a graph paper, we can show this as a curve diagram on the graph where the curve is drawn like this, where the data which we have given first player 192, that means 192 for first player is shown here, nearing 200, right? The scale should be correctly measured. On a graph paper, we can easily identify the 192 mark. Normally, a straight line can be drawn like this also, or we can join all the points where it facilitates to compare one point with the other. Here we can see this height is more than this height. That means first player is having more height than the second player. Second player is having around 160, 170 height. right? And again, third player is somewhat equal to second player, but a little bit of more height will be there for the third player, right? In the previous example, we can see the problem. Third player is 171. See, no, there is a small difference between 165 and 171. Thus, that difference also we can easily show here. This is 165 and this is 175. And again, the data is increasing. Data is increased means for the fourth player it is 189, and for the fifth player 150, and sixth player 168. So 150 is the lowest point which we have to show it on the graph, and 192 is the highest point which you have to show. The nearest point for 192 is 189, and after 189 the next point is 171, and nearing 171 we have 168 and 165. That we will also identify it on the graph paper. Here 192, 165, 171, again 189, and then it comes to 150. Here mark 150 is here, and then again it is rising to some other value. So this is how we can show the line diagram by using the graph paper also. This is title. We have seen rules. Now we will review the rules. This is title. This is index, heights in centimeters, which is shown as line. This is x-axis, this is x-axis, and this is y-axis. These lines are nothing but indicating the height of the picture. And normally in graph paper, we will see all small boxes, as I said, 1 mm boxes we will see, and 1 centimeter box also we will see, combining all the 1 mm boxes. Okay. Next is simple bar diagram. This is two-dimensional pictures. Two-dimensional pictures, as I explained you, these are bar diagrams. Two variables will be there, and most common type of diagram is this one. There are some other types in the bar diagram also, bar diagrams only. So depending on the data, we will be selecting which type of bar diagram we use. A bar is a thick line whose width is shown for attention. A bar is a thick line whose width, that is, a bar is showing, like for example, if this is the x-axis, we can show like this. It is almost depicting a box is inverted here, like that. We'll see in the next slide. Drawn either vertically or horizontally. Again, bars can also be drawn horizontally or vertically from x-axis. Horizontal lines are drawn from the y-axis, whereas vertical lines are drawn from the x-axis. Example. In the example, we will see a simple bar diagram. A firm having A, B, C, D, E, F, 345, 598, 540, 305, 190, 150. Normally, these two-dimensional diagrams are used for two variables. Here, an example is given for single variable only. Normally, it is used. So again, we will try to see these pictures, these figures in the graph paper also. This is the graph paper. These are the bar diagrams. Either it can be drawn from x-axis like this, or y-axis horizontally like this. Then the pictures will become like this, like this. Okay. Here we are taking 1 centimeter is equal to 100. Wages 100 rupees. These are the titles of the x-axis and y-axis. X-axis title is firm, that is, firm is shown on the x-axis, and wages in rupees are shown in the y-axis. So this you can call it as an index also, or this is the index, blue color, and numbers shown can be used as an index. These are the values of x variable, x-axis, and these are the values of y-axis. So here the graph paper is showing average wage in 6 firms. 6 firms data is there, and the average wage paid to the workers. Next is multiple bar diagrams. In multiple bar diagrams, we will see two or more set of interrelated are represented. Two or more set of interrelated are represented means two variables are there and which are interrelated can be shown on the graph paper. Mostly they are used for comparing between two or more related variables. Mostly they are used for comparing. Here also in the previous example where we have seen bar diagram, we can easily compare. This is 345 and the index is showing 345. We can easily compare the picture 345 and 598. This is indicated or this is shown as 345 and 592 as per the index, and in the height also we can easily identify the difference. That means the data is less in the case of A firm and data is more, wages are more in the case of B firm. Like that we can understand. Mostly used for comparison between between two or more related variable. Here we have one example, 1931 to 40, 41 to 50, 51 to 60 and so on. We have birth rate and death rate. Both these data can be variables can be shown in the graph paper. So we will see how that graph paper is presented. Here we will see one after another we is drawn. This is birth rate, this is death rate. How we will know? Because it is indicated here. Index, it is indicated here so that we can easily understand. This is index. We can easily understand the data also. We can compare how much is the death rate and how much is the birth rate here. Birth rate is 41, death rate is 31. For every 1000, we have birth rate and death rate here. Okay. Here, as usual, y axis title and x axis title. These are the indexes. And coloring also can be used. Normal black and white can be used for drawing the pictures, but color pictures convey more appropriate message. It conveys more clearly. By color also we can easily compare the pictures, compare the diagrams or compare the data with one another very easily. In fourth, subdivided bar diagram. Subdivided means bar diagram is divided. Where, for example, divided means here one line, here one line, that is drawn. Depending on the data, whatever the data is there, we can show. We can also show these two in one bar, that is death rate. This is the death rate and this is the birth rate. Complete. If we draw a line here only in the first bar and we can ignore the second bar, we can remove the second bar. We can draw only one bar which is depicting both the birth rate and also the death rate for all the things. But instead of that, we can show even the different pictures for birth rate and death rate. Okay. Each bar represents the magnitude of a given phenomena. Magnitude means what is the depth of the picture is further divided into various components. In the previous slide, I have explained you graphs, how we can divide. Cannot be constructed both on horizontal and vertical basis. It cannot be drawn on vertical or vertical and horizontal. We can draw only in one way. Normally, all the pictures are drawn vertically only by using x-axis as the first variable and y-axis as the second variable. In the example, we have some data which is related to year, marine, inland, and total for the data production of fish for period from 50 to 51 to 86 to 87, like this. You can understand this data by going through the graph here. Here we can show both inland and marine data. This is total inland. This is marine. Like that also we can show. Or the total production of the fish. Right? In all the years are shown on the x-axis and production in lakh tons are shown on the y-axis. Next is percentage bar diagrams. In percentage bar diagrams, we have length of bar is kept equal to 100. Percentage means 100. Always length of the bar will be kept at 100. And what is the actual percentage given, actual data given in the data given in the problem, that we will show according to the percentage. If it is 69%, then we can show only approximately 2/3 of the percentage. Segments are cut in these bars to represent the percentages of an aggregate. Of course, segments are cut. The bar is cut, divided. Cut means divided. Here, science, humanities, commerce. Here, what we say is, for example, for a period from 2002 to 2003, the total number of candidates are the total of these three. For example, 560 plus 240 is 800. 800 plus 220 is 1020. So 1020 is equated to 100. Then these three is indicated in the percentage bar so that all these three can be indicated. Likewise, the next 2003, 2004 also. Or we can divide here like this also. Science, humanities and commerce in all the 3 years. Here, as I said, percentage is 100%. We can total this percentage. We will get the 100%. So yellow color is used for commerce, blue color is used for humanities and science. Now summary. A summary is what we have seen in the previous lesson is about the diagrams. What is actually a diagram? What are the rules for constructing a diagram? What are the uses of a diagram? What are the limitations of diagram? And then we have seen different types of graphs, different types of diagrams, one dimensional, two dimensional, three dimensional, pictograms and octograms, and so on. Diagrams are also classified in one dimensional, two dimensional, three dimensional, and pictographs and graphs, cartograms. pictograms or circles or pie diagrams that we will learn in the next lesson. So the diagrams actually help data comparison and it creates interest in your mind. Now we will see what are the assignments. For example, one examination question is given, that is items and food and some other variables that we will depict on the graph paper. Please try out these assignments. 2, 3, 4, 3 assignments are given. You please try out these assignments and then we'll get back to the next lesson. Okay, thank you.